Welcome to The Funniest Thing, where each week we share stories about how stepping out boldly always leads to better than expected outcomes. I'm Daryl Fazaro, and we're broadcasting live from middle school studios in beautiful downtown Culver City, the heart of Screenland. And today's episode is It's Resurrection Time with our guest Jeff Spikes, who will be up here in just a moment. So, what do we mean by it's resurrection time? Well, just by the definition of the word, it suggests that the real life, our true life, is always with us. Our factory setting is divine by nature. And we're entitled to happiness, freedom, success. We're born with that factory setting. Unfortunately, a lot of us tell ourselves a lot of other stories, and that's losing touch with that part of ourselves. And that's why every once in a while we got to give ourselves a wake-up call, and that's what this episode is all about. Resurrection time. So I'm going to read the description, and then we're going to jump right in. Here we go. And keep these ideas in mind. And when you listen to this show, if you're not driving, or you can listen to it when you get back to your house, if you are driving, jot some of these things down, because you might find them very helpful during your day. I know I do. I'm always jotting things down. You know, just by default, when you carry a little pad like I do, I carry a little pad. I gave a workshop a couple years ago called Create Your Best Life via Journaling. I carry a little, I'm holding it up for people on YouTube, a little 3 by 5 inch pocket journal, a sturdy one, so it fits in my back pocket. And if you're a lady, it fits in any purse. And a pen. And just, I'm going to tell you something you may think is silly, but I know it's a fact. Just by carrying a pad and something to write with, I always carry a pen, you're actually inviting inspired ideas. Your subconscious mind now is open to fun, money-making ideas, creative opportunities, inspired ideas that to create something that come to mind, just because you're carrying a pad and a pen. So, getting back to today's episode and jotting these things down, here's the main point to keep in mind. Your factory setting is set for success. Your factory setting, that's right. We were born to prosper. We were born happy. We were born perfect children, sons and daughters of the divine. So our factory setting is set for success. You don't have to make anything happen. We just have to simply embrace our desires to express and experience more good. Trust your intuitive nudges and hunches. They are God guiding you to the good that you desire. And here's the key. This is the hard thing to do. Simply stop planning, plotting, and scheming, and let infinite intelligence solve the problem in its own way. Trust that God is doing the heavy lifting. For instance, and I only put this in the description because I started doing it this week, and we're going to talk about it. And what happens? I got results. For instance, instead of trying to get more money or figuring out how you can earn more money per month, switch to affirming money comes to me easily and often. This elevates your thought frequency, and you will attract inspired ideas, opportunities, and receive big, happy financial surprises. On this episode, we discuss how to get back into the God groove, which is our factory setting, and enjoy our divine inheritance. And in a few minutes, guest Jeff Spikes will inspire us all to let go of fear and go all in with joyful expectancy. It's resurrection time, ladies and gentlemen. So before we get too far into the show, I just want to thank everyone who contributes to the show on Patreon. Just so you know, we've been able to do this show for over 13 years, completely commercial free. That's right. Thanks to your contributions, there's never going to be a commercial that takes you out of the show. You just listen to it, and all you hear is the pure medicine that you tuned in to listen to. So thank you very much. If you'd like to contribute, and you can contribute a little as $1 a month, because it all goes to the production of the show, the expenses of the platform and the equipment and everything else that goes into the show. And you could do that easily at Patreon. That's Patreon.com. And in the search bar, just put funniest thing and you'll see our logo and just follow the prompts. Also, we got mail. We got a lot of mail this week. We got a card from Northern California. And funniest thing, I started doing that affirmation the day before this card came. At the beginning of the week, the affirmation, money comes to me easily and often, because I started getting into the bad mental habit again. When I saw our budget, we were exceeding our budget here, my wife and I started to catch myself when I was talking with Lori, going, we got to figure out how to make more money or spend less or do something. All that is coming from a place of fear. And that is congested energy. It's not going to bring about, when I'm thinking about, I got to get more money, I got to make more money, I got to figure out how to make more money, it's coming from a place of fear. It's coming from a place of, I need to overcome. And that shuts down the creative process of my mind. I'm not open to it. It cuts me off from God. It cuts me off from intuition. It also puts me on a frequency of lack, and you could feel it. It does not feel good. And any of these thoughts that don't feel good are usually based in fear, and it means we're cut off from our source. So coincidentally, I was listening to, of all things, The Secret, which is also a book on tape, The Secret by Rhonda Burns. And somewhere as I'm listening to this, half listening, half concerned about my finances, it just happened to have someone on there, one of the speakers on the tape, say, I have learned to switch from fear to faith when it comes to money by reminding myself, money comes to me easily and often. I said, there it is. I'm not going to argue with that. So I started saying that. As soon as I said that, I felt better, because it put me in a place of expectancy, joyful expectancy, which is by definition faith. And what came the next day, I get a card. We received a card at our P.O. box, and it had a contribution for the show in it. The very next day, I'm going to read that card. Hi, Daryl and Ed, wherever you are. I'm catching your podcast, Daryl. They are always a blessing. I like the talk about blessing everyone and also asking to be blessed. Very meaningful. Still don't have a credit card, so I send a quarterly check to help as needed. Thank you very much. This is from Lois Conklin. Thank you, Lois. I'm fine here on Murray Creek in San Andreas. Music is being spread around my community. She's a musician and she plays all over up there at the nursing homes, wherever she can play, she plays her music. She's also an artist. I will remember to bless others and be blessed by others. And God bless you and Ed. Keep on sharing. We need you. I'm in Kathy Norman's and Beth Ann's class on Thursday nights. Nice sessions of inspiration and learning. Love, Lois Conklin. She's talking about our guest. We had a guest on here on the show, Kathy Norman, and she has a Thursday workshop that you're free to join every Thursday night, just go to unityjoyoflife.org and you could sign in. Also, she sent a beautiful pen and ink drawing I'm holding up for our YouTube viewers. And she always sends up something, some piece of original art. Thank you very much. We also got 2 postcards from Germany. This one from Kirk says, God was calling. The only problem was he was getting a busy signal. And that's what I meant. When I'm thinking fear-based problem solving, I got to figure out how to get more money. I got to figure out how to do this and do that. I'm actually cutting myself off. I'm taking the phone, my inner phone, the God's line, like the Batman phone at, what was his name, Commissioner Grayson or whatever his name was at the Gotham City. I'm actually taking that receiver off the hook when I'm thinking those, like, I gotta solve it, I gotta figure it out. But when I'm putting my mind back in prayer, can be defined as positive mind conditioning. It's getting on a hopeful frequency. So he wrote, God was calling. The only problem was he was getting a busy signal. And it says, I got to let go. I let go. I got to keep the channels open. I got to get out of the way sometimes. I don't have to do more. Often, I have to do less. Easy does it. Let's not louse this thing up. Thank you, Kirk. We got one other one here from Kirk. On the front, it says, bless a thing and it will bless you. Curse a thing and it will curse you. And that's my favorite line from Emmett Fox. And on the back, it says, there's no need to beat up on ourselves. If I can be gentle and loving to others, I can be gentle and loving to myself. If I can't be loving to myself, I can't be loving to others anyway. Easy does it. All you need is here. That's right, folks. Everything is already here. If you want to send us a postcard, please do, to P.O. Box, funniest thing, P.O. Box 1312, Culver City, California, 90232. Or you could email us at darylanded.com through the contact button, or just send an email to darylanded@gmail.com. And with that, I'm excited to introduce to you our guest. He's been on many times before. I've known Jeff for 40 years. And we met while we were both serving in the military. Jeff was in the Marines and I was in the Coast Guard. And we happened to get thrown together in a military rehabilitation center in Pearl Harbor. So, Jeff, welcome to the show.
It's great to see you. It's great to be here with everybody. 40 years for really.
I know. Well, thank God we were introduced to this stuff.
Yeah.
So what comes to mind for you when you realize that you were born divine and we just get in our own way?
It's interesting. The first thing I think of for really when you sent this to me, when we talked about it, the first thing I think of is being a little kid and really believing that, after it rained and the worms would crawl up on the sidewalk and dry up, I really believed if I scraped them up off the sidewalk and put them in water that they'd be resurrected. I thought I'd bring them back to life, and I had cups all over the garage up until the point I think that my dad spilled one on his suit or something, and or whatever happened. And but it reminds me that the way our minds work and what we believe in and what's possible, and it's really, as innocent as we are, we believe things, and certain things just make sense. Now, knowing more about worms today and that whole cycle of life that goes through in the earth of some of these things that are nutrients and that help recycle the earth and all that. I get that that was also from a place of innocence and not knowing, but really, right? There's a natural thought process and there's a natural way of being that's just there. And me being the one that separates myself from it is absolutely that's the only thing.
Yeah, I think we picked up, I like to see it as my natural operating system. And, in 12-step groups, they talk about getting rid of defects of character. And what they mean by that goes along with everything we're saying. It's like Emerson said, I have to get my bloated nothingness out of the way of the divine circuits. And the bloated nothingness is all this self centered fear, that things might not think, well, it's, I tell myself terrible stories. Things aren't going to work out as good as I would like them. So I got to jump in and get in there and rearrange it somehow. It's all on my shoulders to make it happen. And yes, we have a certain responsibility, but our mind cannot work to its highest level when I'm running on fear. It's like having the parking brake on my car and driving. I'm going forward, but I'm straining everything in the process. And why I brought up how 12-step groups call it getting, the process of getting rid of these defects of character. When you hear that at first, you might think, I have defects of character, like my character is defective. That's not what it's saying. It's saying we're getting rid of defects of character, which are bad mental habits and beliefs that we have picked up and behaviors that get in the way of our success. So by saying we're getting rid of these defects of character, it is actually implying that our nature is whole and good, that and attractive to our desires and attracted for our to receive all we need. That's why I often remind myself of the Bible verse, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Meaning, I just need to take my mental hands off the steering wheel. My mental vibration rises. I get more hopeful, knowing that God is on it. And what happens? I get an inspired idea. It could be something that just seems like a fun, ridiculous idea. And I recommend 2 books. Well, I could recommend 4 books from the same author, but I'm going to recommend 3 of hers right off the bat. If you get any books, and I recommend the individual books because they put these together in a anthology and it's just too thick to carry around. But I like the individual books because they're thin. You can get them on Amazon. They're very affordable, and they're from Florence Scovel Shinn. And the 3 books are The Game of Life and How to Play It. If that's the only one you get that one. The Game of Life and How to Play It. And the other 2 are The Power of the Spoken Word and The Secret Door to Success. And all these books just hammer home the importance of getting out of our own way. And how do we get out of our own way? By prayer. And what's prayer? Prayer, affirmations, positive sayings that we say to ourselves are the best form of prayer that I have found for myself. Because my mind, they seem so silly that my critical mind that wants to work so hard at figuring things out based on fear thinks it's so silly and so naive. It just lets that silly affirmation, like money comes easily and often. My reasoning mind thinks that's such BS that it just goes, "Ah, that's silly. Let him have it. Let him say that all he wants." But what happens is because of that, it drops right into my subconscious. And I know that because of how good it makes me feel. Oh, and then what else happened this week? So you already heard, I started that saying that. And anytime I started to think I got to figure out how to get, I just kept saying, money comes to me easily and often. The card came with a contribution to the show. The next day, Lori received a check for a job she had, a photo shoot she had done last month. Then she received a residual check for book sales from last year from a book that was released in 2016, My Old Dog. And one other thing came, I wrote it down for myself and I can't even recall it now. Something else came through for me, and now it's my mind can't pull it. I'll probably by the time we shut off the show. So, Jeff, do you use any of these, silly ideas to help get your mind uh, in that healthier, in that hopeful and inspired place?
Yeah, and I think the idea of silly, right? It is in the simplicity of things that we find the most rewarding and successful because it is what's simple. Even you mentioned 12 steps, Richard Rohr of the Center for Action and Contemplation in Albuquerque is very well known Franciscan priest, or I don't know what his actual title is. I know him as Richard Rohr. And it's an FR. Is that father or friar?
I don't know. I think it could be
Whatever. Yeah,
father. I don't know. It's one
I have
or the
respect
other.
for him. That I think it's meant to be a term of respect, and I definitely have respect for him. He's been known to say, and he's been quoted that the 12 steps is one of the most significant spiritual breakthroughs in the last couple hundred years, and I so I think it's worth looking at, and I look at these things as a change process, right? We know there's a clarity on what's not wanted anymore, and there becomes some clarity of what you want, but the real motivation from the 12 steps was changing something you don't want, right? And it's of course in many forms now. It's in churches, it's in many different addictive processes and behaviors, and you know but at the end of the day, it's still the most simple of processes of taking ownership, getting hope, of whatever a situation is, getting hope that it can be impacted or affected. And of course, that hope, when we're dealing with what we're talking about today, is this conscious unconscious relationship with the universe, right? Our total being and how we are connected to all things. And what that means, and I really think that is about simplicity and silliness and joy. And so when I'm connected in a place of intensity, and I might be having a good time figuring it all out, but it's not necessarily attractive. And people might look at me and ask me if I'm happy. And if I say yes, they might tell me to inform my face. It's but I yeah, I mean the answer is yes. No matter what the simplicity is, I was talking to my daughter about going to Italy this morning. And I was excited. I wanted her to come to Italy to go to this event that I'm going to that's really cool. We're going to meet some really cool people that are involved with F1 racing. And I'm not really into racing, but I'm into the how great these people are. What they've accomplished and done is fascinating. It'd be great to meet them. So, and I really wanted her to go, and she started looking up the event. There wasn't much detail for her to look at because it's a private invite. And one of the people hosting the event has a pretty aggressive online persona. Right? They're a disruptor. And she was like, I don't know, Dad, I wanted my grandson to come. She started getting really uneasy. And I felt myself getting tight, right? So we talk about simplicity. We talk about getting tight, and I found myself getting sad, right? So simplicity, right? Just what's the self-talk? And I could have gone into a hole then and, oh, poor me, and they, what if this and if that, and and instead I took a breath and I took a minute to breathe and feel and check in with my body and just listen. And I was sad because I remembered that when her and I traveled as when she was a kid, we were pretty rigid. If I drove cross country and she'd go with me, it's like, we're not stopping till we're stopping, or, you know, and so just connecting to her experience and thinking, she, I, I don't know what the stressors she could have been going through, but just acknowledging that there's stress from her end and thinking, what do we want here? I'm not asking them to go anywhere to draw stress. And I certainly don't want stress going anywhere with them. So I emailed her, I texted her really quick, said, hey, I don't want to add any stress. And when you were young and we traveled and did trips like this, they were kind of stressful. So you might be remembering that. And that's not how we do things anymore in our family. And so simple. If this isn't about bringing us together, if this doesn't add joy to our life, we're going to create a million opportunities to be together and meet anyone we want to. So no worries. Don't let it go. Don't worry. We're going to be fine, right? And there was a little bit of a time sensitive. But like, so I don't know, you talk about, do I use the silly or the simple? Sometimes it's just really just keeping it down to what do I want in that minute? And what is that? So, and I will quickly start telling myself things that aren't true. And I was right in the middle of a zone of doing that. I cried for a minute out of sadness. And I almost had this thought of, I'm going to pay for that my whole life. And, you know, like, I'm never going to outlive the, you know, whatever. And it's like, none of it was true. I have nothing to outlive. What happened was what happened. It has nothing to do with today or tomorrow. So it was, I don't know. I didn't mean to share that soon of an experience that was really emotional for me, but um, you know, there that could completely derail the day and I could be, oh, Daryl, I don't think that I can. If I bought into those voices that aren't silly and aren't simple and that are wanting to tear me down. And because I've learned how and practiced, right, and worked at not listening to those voices and reverse them, or don't even reverse them, just say something different. And in this case, it was acknowledging the moment for everything it was, allowing myself to feel what I was feeling, and then thinking, what do I really want instead? What is this about, and how do I make that, how do I bring that into reality today? And I thought, I love my grandson. I love my daughter. I want joy and unity. I want us to be together. I want us to be happy. I want us to travel. Over here was, well, if they just trusted me, or if this just that, or blah, 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 all this stuff that had zero weight, it because I leaned here.
Because you lean
And
towards the positive. Well, that's really was the inspiration to say it's resurrection time, because that those down, frightened, fearful thoughts, it's almost like I'm falling back into a trance. And when we snap out of it, like you snapped out of it, and it's everything's like you said, if we go into the trance of, oh no, why did I do this? She doesn't approve. She thinks it'll be stressful. I really thought this would be good for the two of us. Why do I do anything? I'm just thinking what my head would say.
right,
I can't do the show with Jeff. What do I got to share? Yeah, like I could see it. But that is really the bad habit that the race consciousness, what we're taught is almost like the justifiable way to think. And then talk to somebody else, share about, yeah, I wanted my daughter to go, but she thinks so and so is too aggressive, and you know what I mean? And we get people to co-sign that, and it just becomes one big sleeping pill that keeps me disconnected from who I really am. Joy is the strength of the Lord, not seriousness. So I gotta snap myself out of that often. In traffic, I catch myself getting frustrated, getting aggravated, wanting to call the person that's at the other end waiting for me at the location, because you'll always get someone to commiserate with you in Los Angeles about the traffic. I know that.
Always.
But yeah, but I don't want that. So yesterday I had to be somewhere at a certain time. Someone was meeting there to show me where the parking was. And I saw, okay, the time's going up. I should call them and let them know, well, time's going up. You know what the problem is? It's this, that, and the other about LA track. I'm already catching myself rehearsing what I'm going to say. Instead, I said, no, stop it. I had to tell myself, Daryl, stop it. Stop it. Nothing happens by mistake. Everything's in divine order. Relax. Relax. And what happened? I got there fine. I wasn't late. I wasn't at the time I really wanted to be there, but I was still way ahead of schedule. I had set a time to be there early because of the traffic, but I wasn't sticking to the exact early time I mentioned. And I had to let go of all of it. And what happened? I felt good. I woke back up. I was resurrected. Anytime we get back into the enthusiastic approach to whatever it is we were previously cursing, that's our resurrection. Resurrection happens moment by moment when I snap out of those
Well, the context you're talking
places.
about too, right? When you were the other day looking at bills and that more, the money flow situation and going
Yeah.
down the road of, oh, well, we better this and we better that. And it's like, and the thoughts I was having and what you're talking about with traffic, some of that is putting us either on in this context of resurrection. Those thoughts are either putting us on the cross or putting us in the tomb. And there's no need to do that, right? That's been done already for us. So we can live in the resurrection. We can live in the attitude and the behavior of what is and have that as our reality. And it's amazing to me that no matter how you frame it, choosing gratitude, choosing positive, choosing to look at what's working and look at what's beneficial and look at solutions and all this stuff is always lighter, always simpler, always feels better. The other, it used to feel purposeful to worry and try and figure it out, but
Yeah.
it just doesn't have, it doesn't help be more resourceful, and it doesn't help create more resourcefulness, which is where answers live.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. It cuts us off. Yet growing up and what I was learning in school seemed to be the exact opposite. Be concerned more, or you're not taking this seriously. And if you don't take this seriously, then you're not going to succeed, or you're not going to resolve this issue. And let me tell you something, folks. That is from an expert of buying into that. That will do nothing except create stress, more problems. Acting from that place, you end up, in my experience, gets me further down in the wrong direction, or I have to backtrack. It's just self-defeating. And that's why we have to constantly, or I have to constantly be re-reminded of the opposite. I mean, I remember when I was first being introduced to this new way of thinking, to think, have a new attitude, which is our mental approach. The not instead of the attitude of I got to figure this out. Life is a battle, and I have to win, and success is something like I used to believe, we're born at a disadvantage and we have to learn how to succeed in this uphill battle called life. Oh, that's how it felt.
Right.
And now I'm learning, no, no, no. That actually is not the way to success. The way to success is to enjoy seeing yourself successful, which is the same as saying, you know, pray believing you have received and you will receive. That's joyful expectancy, folks. That's straight from the lips of Jesus. But it's also in the first half of the Bible too, said in many different ways. And I'm going to read something here. So it's hard to believe at first that, wait a minute. So you're telling me I just need to live in the joy of expectancy that things will work out, and they're going to work out. And I will tell you, yes, they will. They're going to work out in many different forms. The first thing is by getting my mind into that state of joyful expectancy that God is on it. God is arranging things on my behalf. My mind is open. I'm not frustrated and stressed out. And the word frustration is the same as congestion. And, early in the last century, Harvard Medical School, and then, of course, many spiritual people will say this too, but they even said there's one cause of all disease, congestion, and one cure, circulation. And that's the law of laws. The game of life is the game of giving and receiving. I cannot hang on. I cannot hold on to my wealth. I have to circulate it. I can't not exercise to save my youth. I have to keep exercising to keep my youth. Everything has to circulate. And when I'm frustrated and thinking these thoughts, these fearful thoughts of lack and limitation, that means I'm congested. My thought life is congested. It's blocked. So I need to get out of the way. Like Emerson said, I need to get my bloated nothingness out of the way of the divine circuits. And I'm grateful he says it that way, because it makes it clear that all this that I'm thinking, that I'm saying, but you don't understand, this is a real problem. When I'm saying that, that's bloated nothingness that I'm putting in the way of the divine circuits to work through me, either through an inspired idea. An inspired idea feels good. It's going to be an enthusiastic idea to call somebody or to follow through on something that seems totally unrelated to solving the problem. And I can't tell you how many times I decided to drop everything and go to something silly, like meet somebody at an art opening, and I ended up bumping in to the Golden Link, somebody else there who, had a renter for a place I needed to rent. I can't tell you how many times, but I'm not open to any of that. If I go, no, I can't go to that right now. I have to figure out how to make money. So I'm going to read this about what we're talking about, and from the book The Power of the Spoken Word by Florence Scovel Shinn. And I highly recommend these books, like I mentioned at the top of the show. Always on man's pathway is his message or lead. Often our leads seem trivial and silly. A person purely on the intellectual plane would dismiss them at once, but the truth student always has his spiritual ear to the spiritual ground, knowing he is receiving orders from the infinite. The Bible speaks often of the still small voice. It is a voice which is not an actual voice, though sometimes actual words are registered on the inner ear. When we ask for guidance and lay aside the reasoning mind, that means I got to figure out how to do this, it means take my mental hands off the steering wheel. We are tapping the universal supply of all knowledge. Anything necessary for you to know will be revealed to you. Some people are naturally intuitive and are always in contact with universal intelligence. But by taking an affirmation, we make a conscious contact. Prayer is telephoning to God, and intuition is God telephoning you. Many people have a busy wire. I can't believe this is in here after that postcard. This was not planned, folks. Many people have a busy wire when God telephones and they don't get the message. Your wire is busy when you're discouraged, angry, or resentful. You've heard the expression, I was so mad I couldn't see straight. We might add, I was so mad I couldn't hear straight. Your negative emotions drown out the voice of intuition. And these negative emotions are what 12-step groups refer to as defects of character, born from negative ideas based in fear, resentment, envy, anger. When you are discouraged, angry, or resentful, it is time to make a statement of truth in order to get out of the woods of despair and limitation. For whatsoever calleth on the name of the Lord shall be delivered. There is a way out. Reveal to me the way. We must stop planning, plotting, and scheming and let infinite intelligence solve the problem in its own way. God power is subtle, silent, and irresistible. It levels mountains and fills in valleys and knows no defeat. Our part is to prepare for our blessings and follow our intuitive leads. We now give infinite intelligence right of way. What a relief. And I was going to say, not only when we, like she mentioned here, and she also goes on to mention what I'm going to say now, but not only by letting go of that concern do we hear these inspired, even silly ideas to do something that seems totally unrelated to solving the problem that needs to be solved, turns out to be where we get the answer. But a lot of these things seem to miraculously resolve themselves, or someone will call out of the blue. Or like in my case, I started doing the affirmation about money, saying money comes to me easily and often. And I started getting evidence of it. Yeah, I could say, well, it was only $50 here, $40. No, it's signs of land. It's proof that this stuff really works.
One 100%.
You were motivated to do something this week. Wait, there was one other thing we talked about earlier in the week. Oh my goodness.
We were going to the gym.
It was about getting out of the way. It'll come to me.
You know, my favorite affirmation anymore, and I call them base repeatables. I know I've shared this on the show before. That different from an affirmation, a base repeatable is something that really speaks to the core of my values or who I am and the highest overarching goal. Like it really helps support doing that thing that is meant to happen. And oftentimes in a large frame, but sometimes it's about the simplest of things. And it's easy to get confused about our physiology, right? There was something about us both going to the gym earlier this week. And I don't remember I think we were talking about something when we went to the gym, but it makes me think about when you mentioned the affirmation you were using, this base repeatable I use, which is what keeps me training and keeps me, if I go for a walk or if I go to the gym, I call it training now because I'm training for life and I'm managing my physiology and doing my best to stay in a resourceful state, right, where I can be effective. And so the idea of stating, because it works for me and my values and my beliefs and my strengths, is every time I train, I get stronger and everyone I know and love gets stronger. Every time I train, I get stronger and anyone I'm serving or spending time with gets stronger. Like I can say that a
Yeah.
lot of different ways, but it's this idea that there's an interconnectedness to the world and it's not just
Yes,
about me and my ego and trying to be a better person. It's no, this is part of a system
it is. It
of
is.
of being effective and that elevates everyone. And all of us, there's an importance for every single individual in their own unique approach to show up in that unique approach and not just do it the way I do it or you do it or the
Right.
someone else says to do it. They take it for no for owning, right? For proving, for bringing in and making their own. So for you to make it your own and then have your own way of approaching it and then showing and sharing that because that fills all gaps of humanity and makes us stronger, right? It's we come together in community. Church, a lot of churches talk about the value of community and connection is so valuable that that corporate we, that grouping that allows the individual, that creates the space, the energy, and holds the space for that person to be to be themselves. And if we're being the best of ourselves, the idea that that ought to be hard. Oh, it's so hard to be the best of myself. But if it's the best of ourselves, wouldn't that just be natural and
That
simple and
yes.
easy?
That's the default setting. But it like I had to remind myself to thine own self be true and God delivers you.
Mm,
Because it's to be ourself,
mm,
like to get out of the way and
yeah.
just be like a child, like not worry
Mm,
about what anyone else is going to think. And I like what, and just be freely me, you know? I liked what you said, about we're all connected. So this is the best part, folks.
mm,
None of this work is selfish. We tell ourselves, I'm being selfish if I just do, ask for more income or say these silly things because how is that benefiting others? It's benefiting others because you're changing your mind. You're snapping out of the lies you've been telling yourself. And
mm,
by doing that, you're contributing in a ripple effect, not only by your new actions, but
mm,
you're actually elevating the race consciousness. We're all connected
mm.
mentally in one mind. The collective conscious, the divine connected wire. That's why if you pray for someone to get well, you don't have to be in the same room. They could be on the other side of the country and you're imagining them well and healthy and feeling better and it'll affect them because we're all connected in one mind. We're all branches of the same tree. It's hard to think about fighting one another once we really take that in that wait, we're all branches of the same divine tree. It
Love
kind
that.
of snaps me out of this guy's not driving the way I think he ought to for me to be where I need to be at a certain time. I
That's
remembered
another
what
good
the
mantra,
other
Daryl.
I remembered what the other affirmation was that we
Oh.
said when we talked on the phone. That's also been helping me, and it's also from Florence Scovel Shinn, and it's about look back over your life, with gratitude, and you'll see that pretty much the greatest things that came to your life came by surprise or unexpected or seeming serendipitously by chance. So that's evidence that this loving God has always been there, that grace has always been our ace in the hole.
Mm.
So she recommended, if you're starting to think, this is it, yeah, I've been lucky in the past, but this isn't, you know what I mean? How do I know I'm going to make money in the future? How I know I'm going to be able to do something like this ever again? And she says, you got to stop those. And here's an affirmation for it that I've been using. What God has done before, he does for me now and more. What God has done before, he does for me now and more. It's not over. Your best years weren't behind you. Your best years are to be. Something just as wonderful as the most wonderful thing you accomplished or experienced in your past. If you're open to having joyful expectancy, because that's what brought it about the first time. It wasn't because you were young. It had nothing to do with anything other than you joyfully expected and anticipated it. And that is exactly how Jesus recommended we pray. Pray, believing you've already received, and ye shall receive. It's not against the law. It's not selfish. It's the way to do it. For those of you who are wondering, well, what about doing something, that I want to do, like a project, a creative project that I'm already planning on doing, that I've been putting off, and I'm thinking these thoughts that are getting in the way of me starting or following through. And I have something here for you. This is from, once again, Florence Scovel Shinn, The Power of the Spoken Word. And she's quoting someone here. And I have to use this on myself all the time, folks. Prentice Mulford, he was a writer. He wrote books similar to this, Florence Scovel Shinn and the other authors from the last century. Prentice Mulford has also some interesting ideas on work. He said, to succeed in any undertaking, any art or any trade or any profession, simply keep it ever persistently fixed in mind as an aim, and then study to make all effort toward it play or recreation. The moment it becomes hard work, we are not advancing.
Mm.
And she gives an example here. She doesn't mention that one of these men was her husband, because she went to art school and she became a renowned illustrator when women were not illustrators at the turn of the last century. And I'm going to read this story because this sums it up, everything we were talking about. As I look back on my experience in the art world, I see how true this is. From the Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia came 8 men, all about the same age, who became distinguished and successful artists. They were called the 8 in contemporary art. And you could look this up, folks, on Google. Not one of them was ever known to work hard. Because I used to think, if I got to be an artist, I got to work hard. Like, work without fun. That's what work hard means. Work without fun. And I am going to say it short circuits everything. So here's what it says. None of them was ever known to work hard. They never drew from the antique. They never did anything in an academic way. They simply expressed themselves. They painted and drew because they loved it, for the fun of it. They tell an amusing story of one of them who became a well-known landscape artist, taking many medals, honorary mentions at exhibits. He had a one-man show in New York City at one of the big galleries and was seated reading a paper. An enthusiastic woman rushed up to him and said, "Can you tell me anything about the wonderful man who painted these adorable pictures?" He replied, "Sure, I'm the guy that painted the damn things." He painted for fun. He didn't care whether people liked his pictures or not. And she says it here, it wraps it up with, "Where I was blind, now I can see my right work, my perfect self-expression. Where I was blind, now I can clearly see and distinctly the divine plan of my life. Where I was blind, now I can see that God's power is the only power and that God's plan is the only plan. The race thought is still with a belief in insecurity. Awake, thou that sleepeth. And that's what we're saying. It's resurrection time, folks. And resurrection time means fun. Take the pressure off. Release the parking brake. And go forth with fun.
Like that.
Did you
Release the parking brake.
release the parking brake? I'm going to say something here. I have 2 books out because I've never been good at self-promoting. But you know what? If I could promote, like Kirky said, he said, you know, if we got to learn to love others. I'm going to repeat, learn to love ourselves, because look how easily it is for me to love and appreciate these other authors like Florence Scovel Shinn, and, you know, or if I'm bragging about what Jeff's doing, I have no problem. But when it comes to me, no, better not say anything. Don't do that to yourself, folks. I'm also saying, you know, this isn't about boasting arrogantly. No, it's about having a healthy respect for yourself. Like Kirk said, there's no need to beat up on ourselves. If I can be gentle and loving to others, I can be gentle and loving to myself. And if I can't be loving to myself, I can't be loving to others anyway. So I have 2 books out right now, and they're perfect books for yourself. They talk about the spiritual meaning. One, spiritual meaning about American symbols that we see all the time, but we never really consider. One of them is the Great Seal, the symbolic guide for happy and successful living. And if you've ever seen the back of a dollar bill, there's some interesting looking symbolism on the back. And that's the Great Seal of the United States. So I got interested in digging into what do all these symbols really mean? You know, we know that, I mean, it's easy to find the history of how they came about, which I include in this book, but also why were they selected? What does the symbolism mean? And I got interested in it when someone, Nancy Norman, said, you know, Anuit Coeptus, that the founding fathers put on the back of the Great Seal above the pyramid, Anuit Coeptus means God favors bold enterprises. And I was like, what a positive, like, affirmation. So it got me interested in discovering, well, what are the rest of the symbols must be just as positive and helpful, not just as the ideals, symbolizing the ideals of a nation. No, a nation is built up of individuals. So the symbols in the Great Seal, or that are, you know, represented by the Great Seal, are for your personal use once you understand them. So that book is, once again, The Great Seal, the symbolic guide for happy and successful living. And the other one is on the Statue of Liberty. It's called Step Out Boldly, the Hidden Meaning of the Statue of Liberty. Both these books could be found on Amazon. And today, I'm going to read something from Step Out Boldly, the Hidden Meaning of Statue of Liberty, because in this book, folks, and we're coming up to the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence here in the United States. Just a quick piece of trivia. As soon as they finished signing the Declaration of Independence, just a few hours later, the Continental Congress called Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams, who just, you know, hammered out the Declaration, and said, "Oh, one more thing, guys, Can you come up with a great seal? So it's on that same day, the Great Seal of the United States was born as well. So in the book, Step Out Boldly, about the Statue of Liberty, I include the personal Declaration of Independence. And it goes perfectly with today's topic. It's resurrection time. So I'm going to read it to you. You get this book and it's in here. You could sign it. You could share it with your friends. Here we go. Personal Declaration of Independence. Today, I declare my personal independence from the tyranny of the inner critic, the scaredy cat who is obsessed about what others may think about me if I follow my intuition, my heart's desires. I break free from limiting ideas. I joyfully expect that my intuition will lead me in wonderful ways. From now on, I declare my freedom to recognize, trust, and act on my intuitive hunches. I step out boldly. You sign and date it. And on the bottom, just like any good contract in fine print, it says, by honoring this declaration, I open myself up to improved health, happiness, love, success, and prosperity, as well as an overall feeling of generosity and love toward my fellows. So there you have it, folks. Jeff, do you want to say anything else before we wrap things up?
No, this is fantastic, man. I think we we live such a blessed life. You know, I do encourage anyone to write their own Declaration of Independence. It's a
Yes.
really great, and you do such a phenomenal job of helping people remember and see and experience the we're taught, today's a little bit about talking about these simple things and that are right there in front of us that we can use to anchor in our values, our ways of being, the decisions we make, how we're connected to everything else. And I really value and appreciate that. It's just there's a reason this show has lasted the test of time as long as it has, without ads, and been really just a kind, all age appropriate, useful, encouraging, uplifting, positive place to be or listen to. And there's a reason for that. So if I could say anything at all, it would be to promote you. And I'm learning to promote myself. You said something early on that about loving ourselves. And also the letter was taught, I think, even
Yeah,
said
that's from
something
Kirk. Yeah.
that was from Kirk. And it's such a thing, right? That's a full circle thing.
Yeah.
Loving myself and loving others as a way of loving myself. Because the number one
Yeah.
time I don't love someone or don't see something that grinds me wrong is because it's something I see in myself.
Yes, of course.
And you've been a huge encouragement to me, Daryl, all these years, and have been a constant reminder. And I just love that, man. So keep writing and keep sharing because it's adding great value in the world and people are benefiting. So
Well, thank you. You just helped wake me up to share something with the listeners too. Speaking of anchors, the Great Seal is on the back of a dollar bill. A dollar bill can be an affirmative anchor once you understand the symbolism, because it has so much affirmative spiritual principles included.
yeah,
There's over 12 affirmative spiritual wake up calls, snapping you back out of your malaise and into your the resurrected you, the you that you were always intended to be. So that's one of the great things, one of the most motivating themes that helped me complete this book and keep it fun in the process, so I would complete the book. So then people will always have, we all have access to a dollar. And we never, it's the most overlooked
yeah,
piece of American, it's the first commissioned piece of American artwork,
yeah,
and it's the most overlooked. And yet it can be a great, universal affirmative anchor, this dollar bill. You just open it up and you could just, once you understand what those phrases mean, once you're clear about what each of the symbols are, I use it all the time. It wakes me back up. It snaps me out of my bloated nothingness and back into life. All right. So thanks a lot, everyone. And if you enjoy this show or benefit, please like it, subscribe, or share it with a friend you think who might enjoy it, because our only marketing plan here at Funniest Thing is word of mouth. So thank you